I decided to run the session due to the high volume of emails expressing an interest in this method, following my email to the JISC list where I first shared these resources. And this in turn was prompted by Kat and Sean's LDA3 session on the 24th of April, which also used visual sources. So I thought it might be good to demonstrate how I use these resources and join this collective effort to promote using images in LD practice. So Kat, I know you're here, you're the one to blame for this session. So, okay, maybe I should actually forward my slides as well. That's the title of my session, and the outline will be as follows. I'll start by providing a rationale for this method, then I'll explain the method, and I'll share some limitations to it. Okay, so let me start with expectations. Universities have these expectations of students that they would be able to write analytically, right? Who has seen any of these lines in students' feedback? Your writing is too descriptive, there's no analysis here, you need to write more analytically. Sounds familiar? Every day. Great. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, great. Well, I won't hide, I will admit, I have done it too as a lecturer. So mea culpa here. I'm, beating my own chest. But then, like a good Catholic girl, I decided to repent and do something about it. And the perfect opportunity presented itself almost straight after I became an LDer, when Sarah Erskine, a colleague whose background is in art, temporarily joined our team in 2016. We decided to harness our skills and knowledge to teaching critical analysis with the use of images. And along the way, I discovered that this methodology, whose origin is really in the humanities, can be really beautifully applied to the art of writing. So I can tell you that the method has had already many successes. After we presented it for the first time at the Writing Development in Higher Education conference in Plymouth, a number of UK and European actually writing instructors adopted it in their own teaching. And then Sarah left our department and I started using the method on my own. I'm not sure if she uses it still or not, but I developed it further and promoted as much as I could at the time. And the result was that our RLFs started using it in their tutorials. So here are just a few comments they sent me in their emails. For example, I can't tell you how valuable students find this. The one I had just described it as gold. Wow, lovely to hear. I have just seen a dissertation student and she's a great admirer of your Charlotte model. And yeah, I called it Charlotte model because of the picture I use, which you'll see in a moment. And then another one said, we have in our office a copy of your Writing with Charlotte, which I have used with great effect for a number of students to illustrate the different levels of writing. It's really effective and they really seem to get it. So this was fantastic feedback, and similar feedback I have received from students as well. The method has also recently made it to Learn Higher and is currently published there as free to use resource. Okay, so what are the advantages of using it? Well, first of all, it's very interactive. The session encourages this kind of call and response style, which is my favorite way of teaching, really. And also flexible because students can work in groups or in pairs or individually, however they prefer. It's also, since it uses images, it's easier to engage with in comparison to text. It doesn't really require much skill, much knowledge. It's just looking at things and talking about what you can see. So in a way, you could say that it levels the playing field. There's no specialist knowledge required, and therefore it's a low-risk engagement. So students are really encouraged to just interpret, free think, free associate, and it produces quite interesting results. And finally, the potential of visual sources to encourage deeper thinking in higher education has been widely explored in literature. Images can be deployed to help students engage in reflection, to trigger discussion, and all of it happens in a kind of low stakes and inclusive environment. It's a skill that can be developed rather than something that is an expectation to know how to do. Okay, so this is my rationale for the method, but let's move to the session itself and how it works. I usually start it by telling the students about the kind of basic elements of writing. So we start by talking about what description is, what is analysis and evaluation, what kind of elements it contains, and therefore telling the students that, you know, description is not enough, analysis is absolutely essential, and then all of it has to be laced with scholarly support. And this is based on John Helston's critical thinking model in a sort of deconstructed form by dividing writing into these three elements. And these elements translate into 3 stages of writing, which I tell the students are color-coded in this exercise as black for description, green for analysis, and red for critical analysis or the scholarly support. And then I ask the students to form small groups or work in pairs or individually, and to use this table. They can either draw it or use a handout I give them to jot down their observations. And we start with stage 1, which is description. Now here, it's important to suppress any temptation to analyze and evaluate what you see. It's only about describing. As the students might discover, looking is actually not as simple as it looks. And students also tend to go on their phones and try to find out information about her, do a little bit of quick research to know what they're dealing with, because that kind of you know, a lack of information can be sometimes seen as intimidating. But I discourage that too. I want them to be open-minded about the image and just kind of tell me what they can see. So I say to them, imagine that you're calling a friend from your trip to the museum and you want to share what you can see. You want to describe this picture to them so they can kind of recreate it in their mind. And I tell them that this will allow them to describe all details they can see in it without actually analyzing their meaning to the listener. So since we're describing, I ask this, the simple questions: what, when, who, where. And examples of these questions could be these. What kind of picture is it? You know, it's not a painting, it's not a photograph. What is it? It's an engraving. Who is involved? Where are they? What do they look like? What is happening in the picture? And at this point, I give the students about 5 minutes to discuss in their small groups or pairs, or just think about it and jot down some ideas. And then I encourage them to share their observations later with the rest of the class. And when we do it, it's important to course correct to make sure that they only describe, despite this kind of natural tendency to analyze or give meaning to these observations. So what do I mean by a description? For example, you could say that, or what I often hear from the students is, for example, they say, she looks like she's rich. But what does it really mean? Describing the fabric of her dress, the way she's sitting, how she presents herself. This is what makes them say she looks rich. But this could be different to how maybe someone else might imagine or interpret a rich person. So it's better to stick to objective descriptors rather than making these judgments. And this way, it's also easier to extract all the details from the image. So after this massive explanation, here's where I would like you to have a close look at this image and share your observations. Can you give me just a few quick points on what you can see in the chat box? So obviously there's a woman, two men, great. The woman is wearing a white dress, excellent. Men attending to a lady's hair, yes, good. In olden time, okay. Man is opening box, great. Kind of leaning on it. A sale or a seller, okay. Woman in a white dress, man putting paint. Hair being done, okay. Can someone see? Okay, one is cutting, yeah. So it's scissors and not a comb. There's, yeah, a palette, paints, preparing to paint her, maybe has painted her already. Quill and ink, excellent. Paint palette, seller, yeah. Okay, anything else? Okay, guy cutting, yeah, references to the French Revolution. Someone is bringing the knowledge instead of just looking. She's looking at the canvas. Okay, so there's a canvas there. Great, maybe looks like a prison. Now we're kind of interpreting rather than describing. They are dressed differently, excellent. This, okay, so we'll get there. Hands intertwined on her knee, excellent. Quill, yeah, good. Light coming in from above. Oh, beautiful, thank you. Table made, yes. Mm-hmm. Anything else on the table? There's a draw. This is a drawing, okay, yeah. Dark corners, yes. Revolutionary hat, great. Yeah, okay, yeah, very long, exaggerated hair. Name of the painting at the bottom, excellent. Smooth skin, yes, paintbrush. Knife on the table, thank you. Okay, now I can stop you for a moment because I got something to hear. Okay, so this is where I would summarize all these observations. So this is just a very kind of short summary here. A woman and two men sitting in a dark room, having her hair cut, her hands interlaced on her knee, and there's this palette knife on the table as well. I draw particular attention to these two because these usually get actually unnoticed. They go on unnoticed by the students. So I want them to really see them, because I'm trying to say to the students, you know, someone who creates an image like this, just like a piece of writing, they make choices, they make decisions as to what to put in it and what not to put in it and how to present people in it. So the palette knife is there for a reason. It didn't have to be there. Not every painter paints with it. So it might mean something later. And at this stage, once we have this discussion, and it's quite lively and I'm really enjoying it with the students, I show the students an example of how this discussion could be written as a paragraph, as a piece of writing. And if you closed your eyes and I read it to you, you should be able to imagine this engraving. I won't do it now, you can always come back to it. So let's move on to stage 2 then. And this is the most fun section, really. This stage is all about asking deeper questions and providing interpretations for the observations made in stage 1. And here I really encourage the students to make the most outrageous claims about what the particular elements of this picture could mean. So I refer them back to this table to kind of in the second column, jot down their interpretations. And analytical questions include why, how, so what. So for example, why is she here? Why is her dress white? Why is her hair so long, curly and exaggerated? Why is her hair being cut? Why is her portrait being painted? What does this dark room represent? There are so many questions to ask about this image. And the essence of the stage is really to speculate as much as possible. Free your mind, be bold in your interpretations. It doesn't have to be true. It doesn't have to be right. It's just about exploring possibilities. So Questions could be this way, asked this way: how do the woman's clothing, posture, and facial expression reveal something about her personality, mood, and status? What do these elements tell us about the men? What are the implications of the different elements and the composition, etc., etc.? So what do you think? Can you share a few of your own interpretations in the chat, please? So let's say, what does the white dress mean? Okay, so she's waiting for the guillotine. Okay. Luminosity of her dress contrasts hugely with darker and rougher environment. Excellent. White implies innocence. Yes. Innocence. Yeah. Saintly even. Yeah. You may probably see that light coming from above shines on her like she's Virgin Mary almost, right? A cruel regime where hairdressing is forbidden. Criminal elements. Okay, yeah, great. Undergarments. Her dress is on the floor, yeah. It's actually scissors. You may not be able to see it from this distance, but it's scissors and not a comb. Hair and fabric is a luxury, yes. The hair is her beauty. They're taking it away from her. Dress in the sense of the times. Petticoat, okay, yeah. Selling her hair to feed her family, yeah, okay, great. Facial expression seems uncertain. Attentive man, looking for lies, wanting a picture as a reminder, great, of her beauty, maybe, yes. Palette knife foreshadowing danger, excellent. Can't cut her head off. I think that they probably can, but there's something in this ritual of cutting it, maybe humiliating her, yeah? Eyes could be seen as yes, great. The power distance, who is in charge, the woman or the man on the left? Okay, great, yeah. Very inventive, indeed. Yeah, and that's the point, yeah. So there's some very simple conclusions that, yes, the white dress is innocence. Maybe the exaggerated hair is symbol of her femininity. And so the hair cutting could then be quite humiliating. And then why is her hair painted in some such conditions? Maybe she's important. The writing quill, yeah, what does it represent? Yeah, is she write a confession, or is it, does it represent something else? Someone asked about the toilet. Yeah, at this point I usually have to explain to the students that a toilet is not a toilet here, but it's preparation. Yes, the last preparation of her. So definitely she's going to probably die. Hence, yeah, educated, yeah, implications of different elements in the composition suggest longing for the times that have already passed and the transition to new, less affluent times that are to come. Yeah, or just death. Yeah, but definitely longing for that image. Maybe, you know, her hair is being cut off. She's looking at the picture with that hair, with that beauty that she's about to lose. Hence being bound, yes, okay. It could also be modesty as well, right? Sitting in this way. She's not manspreading in the middle of a room, but rather being very, very modest. Excellent. And there's so much fun exploring these possibilities. I've had all sorts of crazy interpretations, like she's a prostitute and she's about to be served, or I don't even want to go into the craziest stuff, but yeah, this is supposed to be a lot of fun and exploring ideas without being bound by certain preconceptions. Okay, excellent. So at this point, I basically summarize or pair up the observations from stage 1 with the interpretations from stage 2. And after we do it, I show the students how it could be written about. So in black, you can see the same piece of writing as before, but now analytical elements are added in green to show how they can be integrated into one piece of writing. So in this way, students can learn how not to separate description from analysis. Sometimes it works in terms of, you know, separating. So you can have a paragraph on description and then engage in another paragraph on analysis, but it doesn't always help to have this kind of, I think it works very well in art history as a subject, but in terms of just learning how to write analytically, it really is valuable to know how to integrate description and analysis. So at this point, the students are ready for stage 3, and this stage is all about knowledge. It's all about supporting their interpretations with evidence. Charlotte Corday was a real person, and research into her life reveals a lot of interesting facts that will confirm or refute some of the speculations made in stage 2. So this is about emphasizing the importance of research and sound knowledge base required for any academic analysis. And it's also showing the students that some of these crazy interpretations, such as that she was a prostitute, for example, have to be, you know, removed from the analysis because they're simply not true. So, it kind of prepares the students to let go of some of their interpretations and accept that there might be a better way of engaging or interpreting a picture, an issue, etc. So what I'd like to ideally do at this stage is ask the students to research her, but I never actually have the time for it. So instead, I provide some basic information about Corday and the events that this image relates to. So we have the title of it. It's The Last Toilet of Charlotte Corday by E.M. Ward. It's a very small writing, so you might not be able to see it. It was created in London. Actually, the date is not on the image, but you can access it from the library, the British Museum, not the library, the British Museum. And we find out, you know, a very quick research leads us to the fact that Charlotte Corday assassinated Jean-Paul Marat, who was a French revolutionary journalist. And that happened in 1793, which was in the middle of the terror stage of the French Revolution, to which this historical event relates. These are the kind of basic things I share with them, but I also then ask them, what else do you think you would need to know to actually be able to engage with this image and properly interpret it with facts? What questions should you ask? What information should you look for? And, you know, there are things we might want to know about Charlotte Corday herself, maybe about Marat himself. Why did she kill him? You know, she killed him because he was inciting terror and inciting more hatred in the country, and she felt it was her civic duty to end his life and in order to end that terror. And, you know, journalists, powerful, right, in terms of spreading all sorts of ideas, and in the painting, maybe that quill, pen, and ink are representative of that power to spread ideas. Maybe we would have to know something more about the revolution in general. What was the place of women in the revolution? Maybe something more of this execution in particular. Maybe even more about representations of women in art in general, or just Corday, because there are actually multiple visual representations of Corday in the history of art, because she absolutely fascinated artists. They were intoxicated with the idea that a woman could make a stand, a political act in the revolution. It was, you know, not very accepted or expected in the society, which is I'll share it with you a little detail in a second, which testifies to that. So again, if we were to think about all of these, oh yes, that's a very good point. I do ask them to reflect on, yeah, why this engraving is created about 70 years after the event took place, and not in Paris but in London, exactly. So this is something I try to kind of extract out of them as well. Yes, very good point. And this kind of brings us to the fact that someone, you know, there is something going on in London at the time. For why would an obscure artist we really can't find much about is interested in her act, in her actions, and it kind of fits really neatly in the kind of genealogy of representations of Charlotte Corday, and some of them are not as positive as this one. Right. So at this point, the students are ready to kind of summarize these descriptive elements and analytical elements, and then the knowledge, adapt the knowledge to them. So the woman represents innocence and the men revolution, and this kind of juxtaposition and this tension really fascinated artists. So she's commemorated in art a lot. Then that prison cell is quite an unlikely place for a woman like that, because she did challenge women's place in the revolution. She's having her hair cut. That's a humiliating ritual. They did not have to do it, but she's being readied for the guillotine, and they want to be ugly. They want her not to be admired and her act to be forgotten or even dismissed as unimportant. Her hands are interlaced, which could indicate modesty, and that's potential allusion to the fact that she was a virgin, and she was a proven virgin, because her people who wanted to dismiss her act ordered a post-mortem on her, because they wanted to discredit her. They wanted to show she was an unmarried woman and of loose morals, because obviously if she's not a virgin in the 17th century, she's a whore. Sorry for using that word, but that was that was the kind of division of women in the 17th century. So all of these little elements that we find out once we start doing research reveal, you know, how important this representation is and how many of these facts this artist is hinting at. And the palette knife obviously hints at the crime, because she did kill Jean-Paul Marat. So after we do it, I warn the students that now they're going to look something very intimidating, and this is it, right? Really intimidating. This is a way of combining description, analysis, and scholarly information, the knowledge. And I don't ask the students to read it. That's not the point. I do give it to them actually in the handout. I just want them to grasp it visually, to appreciate how much of any academic writing is derived from sources, because you can't miss it. Yeah, it's in red and it's underlined, and it kind of screams at you all this knowledge that has to be integrated in order to support the ideas and make it into an academic piece of writing. And just for comparison, I show the same piece of writing with a different way of referencing. So this one is Harvard, and the second one is a footnoting system, MHRA, which is more often used in the humanities, especially history. And then I also include a reference list, and I do it mainly to highlight how much research sometimes may have conducted for even quite a short essay, and also to point out that they could be used, they could use these sources to explore this further. And I compare it to a bibliography that would be created in MHRA, just kind of for to be consistent in my kind of two-pronged approach. And at this point, I bring back this text and just ask the student to still think critically about this piece of writing. I ask them, is it, or could it be called an essay? Is it a proper a piece of writing? And hopefully they comment at this point on the lack of structure and argument. So indeed, I say, this is not structured. I want them to show me, to tell me that this piece of writing still needs work, that the points made need to be organized into paragraphs, including an introduction and a conclusion, a clear argument, etc. So then, just quickly, I show them how this could be done, how to organize ideas. You know, we can identify the overall claim that the engraving is a sort of political statement by Ian Ward, and the three kind of main points that this piece makes, so we can turn them into paragraphs followed by a conclusion. And we have a little discussion about it, and then I walk them through, you know, the simplest paragraph model, just to remind them how it works and provide them with an example of what this could look like with paragraphs. So this piece of writing now turned into a proper paragraph piece of writing. Again, I don't ask them to read it, or I don't read it for them, but just to show it for the visual effect, that it is broken up into sections rather than being like a, you know, kind of brain dump on a page. And sometimes it helps to, and if I have the time to do it, it helps to spend a little bit of time deconstructing a couple of paragraphs from this piece, so telling them, you know, how these different sections work, and with another example of it as well, so they kind of see that all these elements of that have to be in a paragraph can be employed in multiple ways. You know, they don't have to stick slavishly to the formula, but as long as there is support, there are examples, there is analysis in there, they will be fine. So basically, this concludes the exercise, and at this point I just like to tell the students that this method can be applied to other sources as well, including other images, film, text, objects. I sometimes work with a bottle of water, and just to show them that they can analyze anything, a concept even, or a document, because anything can be critically analyzed if careful attention is paid to these three stages: description, analysis, and critical evaluation. So in order to prove that, then I ask them to apply this knowledge and this skill that they have just developed to a more current image. And this is, I know, controversial, but that's good. Controversy is good because it allows people to really kind of perk up and you know, be crazy in their ideas. So we could play with it as well. Can you tell me what you can see first? This one is much simpler, this image. It has fewer elements, but can you identify them all? Yeah, students, films, yeah. Okay. And then looking down at a crying child, great. A red background, yes, magazine title, Donald Trump, small child crying, stood, yes, power, okay, hope looking down, condemning. Okay, so we're moving on to analysis, white capitalist patriarchal society, okay, great. Okay, yes, red for danger, I don't care if you're crying. Okay, so note what is happening here, that we tend to jump straight to analysis, but obviously we also don't, okay, at the edge of the picture, excellent. So he's not fully in, he's a little bit of out, she is in, yeah, but he's kind of almost like barring entry to that frame. And the frame, photo montage, great. A frame is white, time at the back of the picture, yes, okay. Oh, the top of the picture. Yeah, so we're mixing, obviously, our kind of analytical points with our descriptive points here. Welcome to America, okay. Please don't make me drink bleach. Okay, yeah, so it can be adapted to any moment in time, really. Pink clothes, excellent. And pink clothes stand out because when you look at the rest of the color coding here, you see that it's, you know, mainly red, white, and blue, so American colors, but she's in pink, so it's like she doesn't belong, right? And then time is red. Some students sometimes link it to actually Nazi colors. This red, and the lettering is so bold and aggressive against the white and red as well. Welcome to America, very small type. It also has a full stop at the end, and I think it matters as well. Disproportionate size between Trump and Child, yes, excellent. So again, there's a lot to play with here, and you know, we can identify these basics: time in capitals, red background, Trump in a suit, and a little pink girl in pink. Welcome to America in white. We have this white border around them, so we can then analyze. So what is time? Maybe it's time to think about this issue. We can play with that. Or it's just Time magazine. Red background, blood, fire, it's a jarring image. Then we have this comparison, this overbearing presence, his barring entrance, power versus helplessness, color mismatch. So in this American color scheme, she doesn't belong. We have welcome to America, but there's this rhetoric versus reality for some. So, and then white border is America just for whites, yeah? And then we can start thinking, okay, what does it all, how can it all fit within the actual circumstances, within our state of knowledge? So maybe something about Time magazine readership. What political leaning does it have? You know, red could represent the Republican Party. What events does it refer to? What does it comment on? Maybe something about US immigration and how it's changed over time. You know, even the question, who belongs in the US? Right, so all of it can be, a little picture like this can lead to a very rich piece of writing. It doesn't have to be just a you know, very basic engagement with it, but can really lead to some meaty, juicy analysis of the current situation in the United States. But this is, yeah, so that's just a way of thinking about how to think analytically. Yeah, and this is, again, fun. And at the end of it, I really just come back to this basic model to just remind the students of these stages visually again, but also tell them, you know, we can do the same thing. You can do the same thing with a piece of writing. You can do the same thing with anything you want to think about. Even sometimes I use it to break through writer's block, because you can just work on any piece of writing by using these three stages to any item, any object, any idea. And I have tons of students' feedback that shows amazing eureka moments after they do this exercise, but I would be dishonest if I said it's flawless. And there are issues with this technique, and they basically come down to three main issues. The first one is that some students are turned off by the historic image. Yeah, so especially I've had some negative responses from students in criminology, ones who had their own ideas about what is happening in this picture, and they basically thought it's a little bit too historic and it's not their thing. Yeah, and I'm not teaching them the right thing. So it's it can be met with this kind of response. But the solution is to use more current sources, more current pictures, maybe less even politically charged. I chose politically charged because I think it's more fun, but it can be anything related to the discipline we're working with. The second one is that some students do see it as discipline specific. So for example, I once ran this workshop with students who were basically, it was two groups, combined students from art history and anthropology. And even though I ran this a session with different disciplines, the anthropology students thought it was just for art students and it wasn't for them. So they felt left out, which was exactly not what I wanted to achieve in a session. But here I think a key is to offer a good explanation of how to apply to any discipline, and just give a little bit of this kind of meta analysis and in terms of the pedagogical applications of this method. And finally, I have found that some students may find it hard to apply the visual method to text. So my next step is to develop something similar just with a textual source. And I'm thinking just a short paragraph or even a longer quote, which is rich with meaning and which could really lend itself to a similar deconstruction through these 3 stages of analysis: describing the language, describing what's happening in the quote, then analyzing the particular choices the author made and what they wrote in it, and then applying knowledge in the 3rd stage. But this is, it hasn't happened yet for me, because it is quite a lot of work to put it together into something that that will work as a session, and the students will, you know, gracefully accept as a way to deal with analytical thinking. Poetry, yes, poetry is a great idea as well. Again, it can be quite niche for some students, but I think because it's so rich with meanings, it can be played with as well. Okay, so this is it, and I was just wondering, I know that there has been a lot going on in the chat itself, and I haven't been always able to trace what is happening, but I just wonder what you think and whether you would find it useful. Maybe you have questions that I could answer. Oh, triggering ideas for further development. Great. It's amazing. Yeah, if you feel like this is something that could inspire you to do something differently, that's just more than I could ever wish for. Did you know a lot about the painting before I picked it? No, I didn't. I picked the painting because it was free to use on the British Museum website. So I just didn't want anything that I had to secure any rights to. And then I started doing research about her, and I just was fascinated by how much you know, information you can find and use, and it just was like an endless fascination with her, just like the painters themselves. How can I use it in my essay? What would you say to students? Yeah, that's a good question. So I have actually done sessions with students who had to work with a document. So sometimes students have to do source analysis, and I must say this was quite an amazing result, because students then applied exactly the same the model to their source, and in that particular groups, I don't think there were no thirds. There was maybe 1, 2, 2, and the rest were high 2 1s and firsts, which had never happened in that particular group. So I knew that it was very, very effective. Where am I? Oh gosh, the chat is moving faster than I can follow. But there are some really good and really nice comments. Thank you so much.
Alicja?
Yes.
Hi. Yeah, sorry, it's Steve here. I'm so sorry I was late.
Oh, it's okay.
Everyone.
Are you okay?
Sorry. Yes, I'm sorry, everyone. I had to cover a session, and actually, similar situation to this, I couldn't get away from the questions as they're flooding in, but I'm very sorry I'm late, and thank you ever so much for the session. I was just picked up on a few of the questions. I realized you've been busy sort of monitoring the chat and responding as you could. There was a question from Deirdre regarding sort of the diversity of images selected, and whether that's something that's factored into your work or your plans for the future, in particular in relation to BAME students.
Yes. Yeah, it's definitely a consideration, which is why I incorporate. So initially, I only used the Charlotte image, but because I had all sorts of feedback from the students, and I just I'm pretty anal about feedback. I ask for feedback after every session and from every student, and I look at it and I read it with fascination to see what they think about it. And yes, so these have been comments, and which is why I moved on to the Trump image, because I thought it's much more, it offers more ideas, or maybe is less located in history, less niche. And I am thinking about other things as well. So sometimes I kind of ad hoc bring in an item to the classroom and just, you know, place it in the middle of the classroom and ask the students to tell me about it, and use the same method just to work with that item. Or it can be an idea. Again, in order to develop it fully into a workshop with pieces of writing, just like here, these examples of writing, that's a lot of work, and I haven't done it yet because life is what it is. But yes, that's the plan to play with it. I think particularly I am driven to try a piece of text, because that gap between image and text seems to be a challenge to some students. Not all. I think that some students grasp it almost instantly, but those who struggle could really do with a little bit more guidance in terms of bridging that gap. I don't know if it answers the question. I kind of go on a tangent sometimes.
I must apologise. It was actually Sandra who asked that question, not Deirdre, but thanks ever so much to Deirdre for pointing that out. There was a question as well about how long the session normally would be. So how long would you give that exercise?
So I do like to do it in 2 hours because it's just more time to play and more time to discuss things, and then I can also comment more on the handouts and tell the students how to use them, etc. But it can be done within 1 hour, and I have done it as well. So it can be it's quite flexible in terms of how you do it, and you can cut out certain sections. So for example, paragraphing can be cut out completely, and you know, if I only have an hour, I focus mostly on that analysis and explaining how analysis works, rather than you know, extending it onto structuring and building an argument and, you know, trying to do everything in one go. So it just depends what I have to work with.
Yeah. Yes, sorry, I think I've just picked up on the same question. The question just come on about it having worked well in this format, whether this is a format you sort of considered for the workshop that you run with students.
Yeah, I definitely will, because I might not have a choice. So, you know, this is the brave new world, and I'm open to these kinds of challenges. I think it would work well as a webinar. I would just have to consider, you know, accessibility even of the image, because I'm not sure how well you could see it. If I'm in a classroom and I have a big projector, the image becomes large and you can see every detail. Or sometimes I give it also as a handout so that students can actually look closely at it. And I don't know, you know, how you could see it on the screen as well. So little considerations such as this one, I have to keep in mind. Also in terms of, you know, group work, how students would communicate with each other, or would it have to become a kind of more isolated exercise where students provide their individual responses? So all sorts of considerations of this kind I need to think about. I see some new and wonderful ideas there about cutting up magazines, and excellent. I look forward to reading this chat after the workshop to see you know, what it inspired in this creative community. Yeah, I think that the main problem with going online, just to come back to the question that keeps appearing, is that in the classroom you can really see, you know, the students being very, very energized, very dynamic, talking to each other, sometimes arguing, no, it's not like that, no, this doesn't mean that, etc. So this would be lost in an online environment potentially. So that's my only concern. But I think it's all about planning and thinking about different possibilities that, you know, may present different solutions to that.
And I think perhaps we've got time for one more question, because there was one that came in asking if you could just explain briefly how an exercise like this could work with a text. I don't know whether that was in response to a suggestion of yours, Alicja, okay, or one that came up in the chat.
Yeah, I did mention that that's my next step. This is what I want to do. But so I want to choose a piece of text, and my kind of primary concern would be that this piece of text is short, is rich in meaning, and is something that can be really mined for information. So in a quick, so I think that sometimes the problem with text is that it's stressful. It causes stress, that people feel like it's more difficult than an image, and I want to avoid that. So the less text, the better. I wouldn't choose a long piece of writing. I would choose maybe an extended quote to kind of pick apart and first describe what is going on in that quote, in that text, then try to analyze it for meaning, interpret, provide various interpretations, because of course language is tricky as well. Language can be interpreted in multiple ways, and only then verify it with facts to bring evidence for the interpretations that are sound, and to maybe discard the interpretations that you know, don't add up or cannot be supported in any way with existing evidence. Yeah, and as you say, Jackie, yeah, you can describe the text using the same what, when, who, where questions, of course, and then the same with analysis. Why is it written this way, or how does the author make their argument, or, you know, so what does it mean? What's the implication of these particular choices? And then this kind of analysis comes to life. And the same goes, people have mentioned poems a lot. I think the same goes for poems. Poems are rich in meanings, and there's so much to play with. I think poems could be a bit more difficult in the sense that when it comes to bringing scholarly support, bringing knowledge, it may be more tricky. I probably would feel more comfortable working with sources, with academic sources, rather than poems, but I think they're definitely rich in meaning as well. Yeah, interview, diary, letter, absolutely. All of these documents, historical documents, or current documents as well. would text and image work together? Yes, why not? That's a good idea too. Yeah, academic text rather than a poem. Yes, so I suppose it may also depend on the audience. What student, I really like to create bespoke sessions to students, so bear in mind who I'm talking to. So some students would do well with an academic text, some would rather have something maybe more informal, but again, to me, it really depends on who I'm working with. Old newspapers, yeah.
And just before we wrap up, there was a practical question from Louise about saving the chat, and I think someone has pointed this out. But at the bottom of the chat box on the right hand side, the 3 dots, there should be a save chat feature there if people want to.
Yeah, and I think my Zoom will save it anyway.
Yeah. So Alicia has captured the Zoom as well, so it should be available one way or another. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
I mean,
thank you.
This is really quite overwhelming. Thank you so much for tuning in on this beautiful day and being here and sharing ideas. That's really, really wonderful.
I think, as you'll have been able to see in the chat, Alicia, lots and lots of questions, but also lots and lots of endorsements, and a lot of people inspired to try out and to apply this same technique and this same approach in their own institutional context as well, which is great to see.
Yeah, fabulous. What else could I wish for?
Yeah, and I was really struck by how you had to reprimand us and discipline us when we were lapsing into interpretation and analysis. I think we've typical learning development audience, I guess. I was wondering how often that happens when you're too. Okay. So it's now 4 o'clock, so it's now more or less time to wrap the session up. So I'll just apologise once more for arriving late.
No problem at all. Thank you for coming.
So it goes to everyone. You don't all have to be as forgiving as Alicja, by the way. If anyone wants to chime in with a reprimand, please feel free to do so. So you will have seen, hopefully, from an email this morning that there are further sessions scheduled in the not too distant future. I think the general consensus is this has been a huge success of a program, and it's been lovely to finish this particular run with this afternoon's session too. So look out for details of further sessions, and do keep coming along, contributing, learning, and encouraging your colleagues. But for today, I'd just like to say thanks ever so much once again for Alicja for running such a stimulating and an inclusive session as well. It was great to be able to get involved in the exercises, to sort of see for ourselves from the inside how they work. And once again, clearly from the contributions in the chat, it's clearly made a lasting impression, and I'm sure we're going to see lots more of this sort of practice in institutions up and down the country in the next academic year, and indeed beyond. Okay, so
just to maybe remind everyone, if you ever want to have another look at it, the materials are on LearnHire as well, so please feel free to use them however you want.
Yeah, always visit LearnHire. Yeah, it's always worth checking in on LearnHire and the resources that are available there. Thanks for that, Alicja. Okay, thanks ever so much everyone for coming. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you again soon, I hope. Bye-bye.
Bye.